we should probably say a little bit about the relationships over here. Michael and I've known Michael all 56 years of his 50 years of life. And Shaun and I very briefly met on Glen Beach in South Africa in like 1972 or something.
Shaun was our hero
a competition.
And
what he doesn't know is that I was involved in actually making a film with Clive Barber on which he became the sort of poster, literally the poster child when he was about 13 years old. So this is sort of a bit of a coming back together. So maybe I'll just have Shaun say a few words and then Michael.
Well, firstly, this is my little boy Luke. Firstly, I'd like to thank David for putting on the event. It's great to see the UCLA taking surfing seriously, because when we were young we never did. And it's great that there's some introspection about what happened over the last 30 years in surfing. My film that I made with Jeremy, gosh, I think Jeremy's here. Jeremy, are you? Yeah, there's Jeremy directed Bustin' Down the Door. Was a film that we thought of about 5 or 6 years ago. We wanted to just tell a story about a special time in surfing over the period of 1975 and 1976, when a group of young guys from South Africa and Australia came to the wonderful island of Hawaii, a place that we'd read about and a place that was always in our dreams, and we came there to try to change our little world. And it was a story about our great love for surfing, our obsession with surfing. It was a story, as I'm sure some of you have seen it. It was a cultural clash as well, which unwittingly took us into some hard times. But I think it's really the last 3 minutes of our film that really encapsulates what it's all about, and that is how great surfing is, and how much it meant to us, and how surfing is for us young guys was part of our present, but we always had that thought of it being part of the future. And the way Jeremy cut our movie together, if you saw the last 3 rides of the movie, it sort of starts off with a young Mark Richards, and it morphs into Mark Richards today. And the styles are the same, the wave is the same, the wave doesn't change. And I just thought it was just a great way to epitomize that connection that we have for surfing. I'm 57 years old now, and I love surfing as much now as I did when I started. So if there's any questions about Bustin' Down the Door, because the movie wasn't made to sell T-shirts. It was not sponsored by anyone in the surfing industry. There was no surfing industry support of the film. We went out, Jeremy and I, and we raised the funds for the movie together. Initially, my wife and I funded it. My wife went on a holiday to South Africa, and while she was away, I quickly pulled some money out the account and we made the movie. Or started making the movie. Just joking. But it was a real labor of love, and we just wanted to tell a cool story about young guys putting their lives on the line for a dream. And we wanted to talk about the wonderful relationship we had with our heroes and our rivals of the time, people who are here like Reno Abalera and the wonderful Jeff Hackman and Barry Kanaipuni, these guys who were like, who were like gods to us. And it was great to compete against them and become friends with them too, and learn from them, and then ultimately create our own path. And then also Fred Hemmings here, who started pro surfing, a guy we also always admired and butted heads with as well. We didn't call him Dead Ahead Fred for nothing. And my cousin Michael is here. We had some amazing times, and I think we showed that love that we have for each other in the in the film as well. And also a guy who also put it on the line for that dream as well, and went on to create the surfing industry. I mean, both of us. Mike created this amazing company called Gotcha back in the 80s. I had a company called Instinct, and out of that love for surfing came a lot of things, and employment for a tremendous amount of people in the industry. The domestic film business in the United States, a $10 billion industry. Surfing's a $16 billion industry. It's really interesting to see that disparity, that surfing's 60% bigger than movies here in this country. It's really, really interesting. That I love that statistic. Any questions for anyone about busting down the door, you can fling anything at me. I don't mind. Here we have a question here.
I was just wondering, when you were seeing this other film, seeing the other, I've seen Busting Down the Door, and then seeing this film next to it, I know that it parallels the time, and I was wondering if there was ever any animosity towards knowing these guys out on the fringe, going for surfing perfect waves, and you guys are working really hard and you're really focused and you're spending every last dollar to try to fulfill your dream, and then you see these guys that are getting perfect waves and hearing these stories and making tons of money. I mean, before you knew that it was their story would end the way it did.
We were getting lots of perfect waves. I mean, that was our. It wasn't like we had this dream of being pro surfers. We just wanted to surf the best waves in the world, and the best waves in the world happened to be in Hawaii. Okay, when the seasons changed, people started to go to Indonesia, but we knew guys were making a lot of money from dope. It's like, you paddle over the edge of Pap and you decide which wave you want to take. It's quite simple. It's like, it's a very, I think it's, black and white. Like, what do you do? Which path do you want to go down? And I think the movie is, there's a parallel in the movie with that concept of obsession and how you deal with that love of surfing. And do you go to the dark or do you go to the light? It's a very interesting parallel, I think, the two movies. I mean, we were serious about our surfing. We loved our surfing. We had a great amount of fun. But I think most of us, realized that there's a hard decision that you got to make. I mean, a lot of guys in our era. I was chatting to Fred Hemmings outside. A lot of guys from our era died from dope. I mean, there was one of the greatest surfers at Pipeline, a young goofy-foot who was my age, and I stayed with him the first year I went to Hawaii. I remember he was 19 years old, and I walked into his room, and he had a piece of silver foil, and he had a little pipe, and he said, "Shaun, you got to try this, man. All the hot surfers are doing it." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's called China White." It was heroin. And 3 months later, the guy was dead. So, you just got to make that decision. And some guys went that one way, and we went the other. Any? Yeah, go for it.
There's a more intimate connection on this movie, right? And I mean, there was a moment, it still brings tears to my eyes. Shaun and I, we've known each other quite a long time, right? Quite a long time. And we, the way that Busting Down the Door ends and the way that Sea of Darkness came about is, there's a moment at an airport in Indonesia. You'd never surfed Indonesian. Shaun and I hadn't seen each other quite a long time, and there's a really intimate link in these two films. But I've never seen them back to back, and it was really extraordinary to see them play. They do show two different sides of the surfing coin on the one side, but they also show the same sides, and it's. I guess when we were young, right, David and I were we could have easily been on the Mike Williams. We just weren't good enough. We were good surfers, but we weren't good enough as Shaun and Michael, right? You would watch those guys, and they could just go to that other level. I remember watching Shaun, who was about this big, because he was younger than me, at Super Tubes, and he could make every wave. I didn't see a closeout wave that this guy could surf, right? It was a closeout to me and David, or my brother up there. By the way, there's my brother from Cape Town as well. We're all here. And he could, there's that intimate connection that we all have with surfing, and there's that side that anybody can go. And if these guys like Ian and Shaun and Pete Townend could become professional surfers because they could just take it to that other level, And then, of course, later on, we're going to see people like Tom Stone talk, and they're going to tell us, and Reno, and they're going to tell us about surfing not as a sport, but as a birthright. And that's really... when David and I first had the idea to do this, we were talking about colonialism and post-colonial culture, and it's an issue that's addressed both in Shaun's movie and mine very clearly, But neither of these movies were ever intended to be surf industry movies. Shaun was on the boat with me in Indos when we started the movie. We were there. It was a very tough time in his life, and it was really special, We actually made that movie as we sat there. And I still remember that day when my son was out there at Mutz alone and Shaun was just watching him and his leash broke, right? I'll never forget it. I mean, this is just a very special time for all of us to be here. Now I'm waffling on, and Tom will talk about colonialism later, and I'm going to let Shaun talk because he's a world champion and I'm not.
So, any more questions for David or myself about the movies? Yes.
I have a question about the second movie. I didn't see the first one. Apologies.
Oh dear. First one's excellent.
Okay, thank you. My question is about the narrative and the role of women in your narrative. It seems to be a very misogynist, sexist, perpetuating the stereotypes. And
well, I'm not. There's nothing in the movie that I'm supporting, right?
No,
I'm
but it's a narrative. You know, a movie is a narrative. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's telling stories, and it's out there, and you have an audience.
No,
with
I'll
this.
address it. Just so you know, I was a student of Laura Mulvey's.
Sure. Okay.
You know who Laura Mulvey is, right?
Of course. Yes.
Okay, so we'll start there.
Yeah. So the gays, exactly. So the question is, why then use the language which is referencing girls, pussy,
Absolutely.
and the reference to the woman who was involved in the trafficking? We don't know about what happened to her, and yet you brought her into the narrative. So,
and she was. All right, do you want me to just address it? Because I get the gist of what you say, and I'm very conscious of this. You know, I studied with Peter Wallen and with Laura Mulvey, and I really understand, you know, feminism and chauvinism in respect to cinema, and you know, indeed in greater culture. And I was very conscious of that. The film, in many ways, has a kind of deconstructed visual approach. You see, I keep flashing the leader in there and everything to take you out of the picture as you're watching it, right? Those extreme personifications of women and the language that are used, right, is in many ways my understanding of postmodernist feminism, which is not politically correct in terms of a kind of 1970s or a early 80s idea of feminism. This is how these guys characterized women. I have, you know, a much deeper understanding of than perhaps I conveyed in the film, of what that particular flight to G-land meant, A, in terms of colonialism, but B, in terms of sexuality. But there was a certain, I mean, you're right on the money. I wouldn't so much call it misogynistic in as much as there's, it's a kind of sexual preference that was like in total denial. I mean, G-land in its essence was a bunch of men who left women, right? And that's why I use the Conrad motif, right? You know, in Heart of Darkness, right? You know, you have that same, I'm repeating that same kind of motif that Conrad uses in Heart of Darkness, right? There's this kind of rogue element in man's behavior, right? And the kind of dramatizations of the way they personify women within that kind of roguishness. It's the kind of, how can I articulate this fast? It's the permission to be bad, but that permission to be bad, it's like Kurtz, you know, at the end of Heart of Darkness when he goes, the horror, right? And the manager has stolen the photograph of the girl. That is his woman, his supposed love. That's why I have Briar Castle just coming at the end of the movie, because in a weird way, Kurtz is obviously Mike Boyum. Jeff Chitty is like the Russian, right? The guy who goes down with Boyum, down into the Heart of Darkness. But I'm still dealing with objective narrative, right? Even though I'm putting it in that framing device that allows you to frame it through Conrad, right? So the woman, Briar Castle, is like the girlfriend of Conrad, or the girlfriend of Kurtz, who appears right at the end of the novel as a photograph, right? So that was my understanding. I mean, I don't want to get too deep here, but it's a very layered, in my mind at least, a very layered attempt to deal with the woman within the context of that environment. I can't think of it any clearer. Right? It's a Sunday afternoon. I should be surfing. I tried my best to answer that question. We are at UCLA. All right, Dave, you do it. You do it, Shaun.
So both of the films sort of celebrate the commercialization of surfing, different aspects of it, professionalism, and then also tourism to like the Mentawais and everything. And so they don't betray any sort of mixed feelings at all about this development. But of course, as surfers, and partly the movies do portray a love of the purism of not just waves, but these beautiful natural places that aren't despoiled by too many people, for example, crowds. And now, of course, so surfers naturally have mixed feelings because it's much more convenient, now you can go to G-Land easily or the Mentawai boat trips very conveniently. But you might think, given the powerful economic incentives for continuing building surf camps and sort of thing, it's only a matter of time before, we've sort of used the resource. So in some sense, you could say that, as wonderful as it is, this development in a lot of ways, surfers naturally have mixed feelings about the development.
I think there's definitely...
Why isn't that addressed, or how do you feel about it?
I think there's definitely ambivalence about the growth of surfing. I know a lot of surfers feel that conditions are just too crowded and that one shouldn't bring any more attention to surfing. There's just too many people in the water. A lot of people feel that the surf industry, while it has supported the people that work for the industry, it hasn't really done much for the surfing culture. It hasn't really gone out there and created any new breaks. It hasn't given back a lot to environmental organizations that ultimately are the watchdogs of the culture. So I definitely do have mixed feelings, but our story was about a year, from 1975 to 1976, about a group of young guys that came to this sort of fabled place and wanted to make a mark. That's what it is. So it wasn't our place to really address surf culture. I think some of the surf industry chiefs had interesting things to say. I think Bob McNutt in particular from Quicksilver was really interesting. When Quicksilver was flying, he was saying that 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, who could have thought it would have kept going? And, shortly after we filmed that, surfing took a dive. So I think that, in the movie generally, we wanted to, we never came to it with any preconceived notions other than just kind of showing how the story unfolded. And a lot of people just showed who they were by what they said. I think it was a very honest portrayal of the situation. We tried to also give some sort of underpinning to, why some of the guys at that time in Hawaii resented the fact that we came over there and did well. I think for the very first time in a documentary, we spoke about the U.S. annexation of Hawaii in 1898. I don't think it had ever been covered before in a film. We tried to speak to some of these heroes that we had admired, like Barry Kanaipuni and Clyde Aikau, about why. These guys didn't come there and didn't get a smack for nothing. We tried to understand both sides of the situation, but we didn't really I don't think we gave an opinion. We just kind of told that story. It could have been really one-sided, our movie, but we didn't. But Jeremy and I, we didn't want to make it that way, and we didn't want to not make it that way because we had a fear of someone coming and phoning us up and telling us they'd kill us. It certainly wasn't done that way, and certainly guys did phone me up and threaten me about the movie while we were making the movie. I got threats from the same guys who threatened me in the 70s, hey, don't make this movie. But we made it anyway because we wanted to tell this great story about this amazing place of Hawaii and the amazing people there and these young guys who came there to make their mark and make their dreams come true. I just still think it's when I watch the movie, I think it's just a really cool story, and we're so proud of making that movie, and proud, like my cousin Michael sitting here, and Reno, and Ian, and PT, and we're proud of that period, and Rory Russell, proud of these guys that we surfed with, and we never ever had any bad vibes with any of the surfers. But there were certainly peripheral guys. They were tough guys, man. They were tough guys. Gave us a tough time, but we lived through it, and we stood our ground.
Before Fred talks, because he's very... I want to say one thing. I definitely made my movie to be provocative. I mean, that lady who brought up the feminist perspective was already getting it. I was certainly being provocative with the colonialist aspect. My dear friend Tom Stone is here for that particular reason. I'd like him to address it. But, there were issues for me. I mean, I came out of a very left-wing background, out of South Africa. I wasn't ever trying to be, any kind of it's just the background I came out of. That was my family background. That's what I grew up understanding. I was in apartheid, and it was a very different approach to making a movie. So, I think it is kind of, nice to say that things just exist in a kind of vacuum that they exist, but they don't. But no cultural product really does. And we do have to address, and I think this is what this symposium is about. We do have to address that the nature of surfing is travel. That's its great thing, that's its beautiful thing, but the nature of travel is that you're going to step in someone else's territory sooner or later. It's inevitable. It's not possible not to. And as soon as you step into someone else's territory, you have to deal with notions of colonialism and what belongs to whom and who owns what, and whether it's a guy chasing after a woman, right, as you'll bring up, or an exclusion, or the way someone personifies a woman, or whether it's a guy, or whether it's someone chasing after someone else's wave in their country. These things are always going to come up. So that's what we'll hear. And now, Fred, I'm going to give it to the senator from Hawaii.
I just want to ask Shaun a question, if I could.
Sure. This is one of the greatest surfers of all time, right? Yeah. We grew up looking at photos of Fred dropping in the sunset when we were kids, man.
Shaun, one thing you said that was very alarming, that you're still dealing with threats. And isn't it a large part the dark side of surfing, specifically one gangster who's wreaked havoc, threats of murder, drugs that kill people, extortion, all kinds of thuggery. Isn't that exists because many leaders in surfing have either, number one, looked the other way, or number two, more or less got on the bandwagon for their self-benefit?
Wow.
I told you this was going to be provocative.
Fred throws in the hand grenade here. It's a... I think Fred was making more of a statement than a question. But yeah, it's the North Shore. It's not for the faint-hearted. It can be a tough place. I mean, it is a tough place, and it's not just the waves that are the big challenge. And certainly there's a group of guys over there that control that 7-mile stretch. They always have. There's a group of guys out there that control that 7-mile stretch. They always have. And certainly the surf industry, because that little stretch of coastline is so important for their marketing. It's so important for their team riders to get out there and get publicity. It's so important for them to put on their competitions there that they they do whatever it takes to keep the peace. It's just a fact that in from 76 to 79, us young guys got involved, and we copped it because we just had personal disagreements. And we weren't going to lie down, and we weren't going to leave the island, even though people said they were going to kill us if we did. And we stood our ground. But that's really all I think that we could do. As industry leaders, I don't think we have ever, I'm talking for myself personally, have ever accepted that situation or paid off these guys, but certainly other guys have. And that's just a decision that these industry guys make. You're going to pay or you don't pay. I never paid.
Mike wants to say something, and he lives in the North Shore.
Yeah, so my cousin Mike would like to comment here.
So, well, I need the microphone because, oh, sorry. So here's what I wanted to say. You know, it's no different today. Not even in the slightest. I spend a lot of time on the North Shore, as you guys know, and Hawaii is Hawaii. That's the way it is. On the North Shore, between Sunset Beach and Waimea, it's the hui. They run it. They are the de facto leaders of the community, whether it's by default. I've spent a lot of time with Eddie Rothman, personal time. I see it. Things get administered, things get decided. Somebody stole this from that. Somebody goes and says, give it back or else you'll get hurt. It's the way it is. It's not going to be any different since Captain Cook got whacked. Okay? The bottom line is they are there to protect, and quite rightly so, their culture, their waves. But these people come by the thousands and thousands every year, and they surf those waves, you know. And the reality of the matter is that there is a tribalism. It's simple. You go in the water, get in the guy's way, you're going to get cracked. It's that simple.
Hey, it happens in Venice, man. I live in Venice. You want to take someone else's way, but you're going to get cracked there too.
Yeah, okay, now.
Roy Russell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Russell, and I just had my 40th class reunion from Wailoa High School in the North Shore. I probably lived on the North Shore longer than anybody else here. This thing about the North Shore and the bad rap has gone too far. You know, it happens everywhere. In fact, when I got false cracked and my tooth broken at your house.
At my party.
At your party. I got assaulted before it even happened. I got my teeth knocked out before Rabbit did. And that happened in South Africa at your house. Okay, so now let's stop the crap about the North Shore, man. It happens in South Africa too. We're talking about the same thing.
No, there's
the North Shore gets a bad rap because you guys, this black shores thing. That's a small percentage of the North Shore. The guys that I went to school with are hardworking people. Matsumoto, Shea Weiss, all those guys are real soul people, man. So you can't generalize the population of the North Shore.
There's no bad rap about the North Shore. Some of our greatest times in the world happened on the North Shore. There's certainly no bad rap about the North Shore. The questions were asked, and Fred asked a question, and I was, I was trying to reply. But for me, that 7 mile stretch, it's, it's a really special place. It's a wonderful place, and sure, we got into some heat there one year, but we got through it. But it's an amazing place, and that's a place where a guy has to become a man. You know, you go there as a young guy and become a man. But the movie that we made, that Jeremy and I made, Busting Down the Door, it's, the North Shore was our kind of Himalayas, where we went to prove ourselves, and so it's about a special time. And
about the professional aspect of surfing.
Yeah.
It's brilliantly done.
But we also wanted to portray some of the tough times we had, because there was drama, and I was really grateful that we got everyone to comment the way that we did, honestly, from Barry Kanai-Pooney to Clyde Arkau to Eddie Rothman to all the people in the movie commented and gave their side. Does Tom Stone have something to say?
I would like to say something because,
Can I just introduce you, Tom, 1 second?
No.
Tom, all right. Tom Stone is a native Hawaiian. There's Reno. Obviously, these are guys that I've spent a lot of time with working on my Sonny Garcia movie, and they have a different take, and I'd like Tom to take it from there. The words Captain Cook were a perfect way to lead into Tom Stone.
Well, first of all, today was the first time I saw the movie, Busting Down the Door. And I do have comments about it, but let's just leave it in the past, right? It's all good. The thing is that I loved it as, looking at professional growth in surfing. Definitely, you guys came on the scene, you guys bought that, but no matter what, Jerry had already grounded it in that direction. You guys just stepped into his path and moved forward with that, because Jerry was the most influential professional surfer ever to move us all in this direction. You guys brought another level to it, and I appreciate that for that part. On my end, I was a totally different breed of surfer. I was a native surfer. I saw things going down that I didn't like. Fred was there. We had words on the beach for the first ABC Wide World of Sports, and I told him, fuck you, you know, and I'm going to go surf. You guys go left, I'll go right. So, you know, a couple of things you guys don't have, and we have photographs, so you guys weren't the first ones to go backdoor pipe, sorry. But anyway, it's all photographed. Yes, you did. You listen to your movie better. Don't worry, we took that into account. I recorded that part. But I want to say something. And this whole thing about the hui, you know, a lot of people have this, misconception of the origin of the hui. The hui began on that day, and it was just, us maintaining a territorial stance, and Fred looking at an idea of taking surfing to another level. And I don't fault him for that at all. But I look at my position as that it's my place, and the hui grows out of that. Because on that day, changed the connection we all had as surfers. Because everybody thinks the hui began with Eddie. Sorry, it didn't. It began out of an idea that brought myself, Brian Amona, and a bunch of other local guys, and Eddie just had the concept of how to organize it. We didn't. We were the ones that actually thought about, you know what, let's just dump these guys and get them out of here. That was the whole point. Trust me, I was there. I don't give a shit what anybody wants to say. I was standing there. And that's how it grows. And so, it develops into a scene that connects to Mike's movie, right? And so we'll address that later on in the panel. But just having to say a point because, sorry, I'm a Native Hawaiian standing in a world. Anybody else Native Hawaiian here? Voila. Where? You are? Oh, right on. Stand up then. Reno. So how many else? And that's how things get addressed, is that it's always really one-sided or the other, just like, we talk about the female component, right, being mentioned. It's just the way it was in that period of time. That's how we saw it. We're assholes, no doubt, on all sides. Yeah, whatever, Mike.
But I do want to say this thing, that if you drop in on anybody anywhere, the same thing that happens to you on the North Shore is going to happen to you in Venice or anywhere. So,
and that's what I'm going to address right now, the paddling. Is that you guys brought into a whole new way of surfing, one that we felt had no respect. Because that's just the way you guys were. You guys paddled into the lineup, paddled around us, snaked the wave. And that's the technique you guys bought. And you guys actually changed surfing. You guys really did.